think we're good now. Every week, same thing happens. The phone ends up. It must be my internet connection, but the phone ends up sticking, and then I got to do all kind of machinations to get the thing up and running. But I think we're good now. Whoever's there signing on, if you can just hit the like button or something so that I see something come across, or just in the comments say who you are or what have you, and as people come in, then I'll know that you can definitely see me on Facebook. I'm not sure if Carlos is going to be able to join us today. He's I think he's doing a copywriting gig or something. But anyhow, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebel, and welcome to the I Love Jeet Kune broadcast number 19. This is the one about Jeet Kune misconcepts, aliveness training, and limitless possibilities. And this is because today we're actually going to be talking about the Jeet Kune concept. I thought it would be appropriate to wear one of my teacher's shirts. So there's still, unfortunately, some rather huge misconceptions inside and outside the Jeet Kune world about what may or may not constitute Jeet Kune. So today we'll take a look probably at just like a couple of them, right? So here's a story that should really settle the whole thing, but it never has. Hey Ray, what's up with you? Good to see you, man. All right. So there's the Largomano story. Largomano story, you can read it for yourself if you have this book, Jeet Kune, Art and Philosophy. It's on page 149, right? And so what it says is, as early as 1964, at the first internationals, I had introduced Bruce to this is Dan Inosanto talking, right? I had introduced Bruce to the art of Eskrima. At that time, however, he took a pretty dim view of it. Then later, when I visited him in Hong Kong, he told me what he liked and what he didn't like about Eskrima. I think what changed his mind was the emphasis on the empty hands and seeing through the movies that it had a lot of functional value. And I was really flabbergasted when he grabbed the sticks one day and said, okay, now I'll show you what I would do. I watched him closely, and with no previous background or training, he ad-libbed a style of Eskrima that he never could have known even existed. Shocked, I yelled out, hey, that's Largomano. Bruce said, I don't know what you call it, but this is my method. So what happens there is that, so again, this is Jeet Kune Art and Philosophy, page 149. So what happens is that some Inosanto detractors, they seize on his, admission that Bruce Lee took an early dim view of Filipino martial art, and they suggest that this is proof that Bruce Lee didn't have any interest in Filipino Kali, or that he didn't think too much of it. But if what they're selectively doing is ignoring the other part of the paragraph where Sifu Dan says that Bruce Lee ad-libbed Largomano. So if Largomano is Bruce Lee's approach to Filipino martial art, then those of us who follow the Bruce Lee philosophy and the Bruce Lee art of Jeet Kune, then if we train in Largomano, we are actually following what the founder of our method would do when it comes to Filipino martial art. So I hope you understand what I'm saying there. That's it. That should settle the whole argument, situation, or whatever, right? But even more evidence, right, of this occurs on page same book, page 153, right? And this is where Sifu Dan says, right, and as I usually do, all of this I'm gonna put it together by the time we're done, right? Hey, Alfred, how you doing? Right, so Sifu Dan writes, beginning students are told, because he's talking about at the time that this book was written, this would have been when the what do you call it, the Kali Academy would have been up and running, right? Because this book is from 1976 or so. Beginning students are told right from the start that what they are learning is not Jeet Kune. Instead, they can expect a general self-defense course that includes elements of boxing, Wing Chun, Eskrima, Panantukan, and even a little bit of Kempo. That's for you, Alfred. Right? The kicking techniques are a combination of Northern Chinese style and Sikaran, the Filipino art of foot fighting. Right? So, Inosanto is being upfront, and I think to this day he still is upfront. That on I'll talk about this a little bit more too. Right? The seminar circuit. What you're getting on the seminar circuit is not Jeet Kune, right? Okay, so but still people don't get it. So let me try to do one more explanation of it. So let's say we take a Jeet Kune concept like approximate the reality of the situation, right? So what that means is that when you train, you have to train in a realistic manner, because if we're training if we're not training for self-defense, then that's a different thing, right? But if we're training for self-defense, if we're training to know how to apply our art in a self-defense situation, then you must approximate the reality of the situation. So you might take your Pencak Silat training, for example, let's say, right? Okay, let's go out on a limb. And you have to modify it down to where you're not using the flowery stuff that occurs in Pencak Silat, because that's not the functional part of the art. You see? So you use the Jeet Kune mindset, the Jeet Kune concept of approximating the reality of the situation, and then you train the parts of your Pencak Silat that would bring you out on the winning side of a street encounter, if you understand what I'm saying. But this is where things can go wrong, because if you have a large following of students, and some of the people who are members of the I Love Jeet Kune group and who tune in for the broadcast, they run schools, right? And so if you have a large following of students and they want to train like you trained, then you might have to show them the flowery stuff. But it's incumbent upon you, you must ensure that they understand exactly what's happening, right? If you get what I'm saying, right? So let's talk seminar format, for example, right? So it's important for people to realize that personal evolution is a part of the overall JKD process, right? Kurt, I'm not ignoring. I can see what you said. I just said it. I met Shannon. I met Shannon Lee and her mom in 2000. Oh gosh, I gotta do a quick calculation here. 2008, I think it was. It was the 35th anniversary of Cedro Bruce's passing, and so I went out to Seattle for the celebration that they had there. So yeah, I have met her. I have spoken with her. But that it was just that one occasion, right? So back to seminar format. You guys get it. If Carlos is not here to keep me on task, right? I'm trying not to be rude, so I want to say hello to everybody as they chime in. But then that can, with my brain, that can take me off track, right? So it's important for people to realize that personal development, personal evolution is part of the JKD process, right? And today, many people receive their Jeet Kune training in the seminar format, right? Because probably every weekend there's probably a Jeet Kune seminar being conducted somewhere, right? If Bruce Lee believed that Jeet Kune knowledge was not a thing that you could pass on to the masses, then perhaps the approach of showing the masses the concepts of Jeet Kune, not Jeet Kune itself, but the concepts of Jeet Kune, and maybe even using other arts. Maybe that is a high-minded concept, and it could be the way to go, but it has to be explained to people that this is not Jeet Kune. In other words, this could be, I'll coin a phrase, this could be partial Jeet Kune, right? Because it's not the full, this is just an aspect, right? So like if you are at a seminar that features somebody who is like a Junfan kickboxing legend, let's say, right? That's what he's going to show because that's his particular area of expertise. So he's going to show that. If it's a guy who's known for his trapping skills or whatever, if it's a guy who's known as a grappler, then maybe that's what they'll be showing. If they're known for weapon skill, then that's what they'll be showing. And it is the job of the seminar instructor to develop the material that he's presenting. So when I teach a seminar, I teach what the seminar host requests, unless he leaves it up to me to do whatever it is that I want. And so I'll give the students who are attending the seminar, they will get the finished product. But in private, if the instructor, if it's one of my instructors, if it's somebody who's been certified by me, or if it's a fellow Jeet Kune Do instructor, a colleague of mine, or if it's somebody who maybe is not yet an instructor, but is starting a group or leads a group, because I do work with people like that also, then privately, I'll show that person how we got to the finished product. So his students will get the finished product. They'll get the seminar material. But the instructor, because if you're a Jeet Kune Do instructor, you've got to be on a higher level, right? So the instructor will get the details of how to get to that point, right? I'll elaborate on that a little bit later as we go for it. But you've got to make it clear that this is partial Jeet Kune Do, right? Otherwise, people can go away with the misconception that this is how you train Jeet Kune Do, right? Another thing, another reason why this is important is because sometimes a lot of the instructors who attend these seminars, then they make the mistake of thinking that the seminar format is the same as the school format. So the seminar curriculum should be the same as your school curriculum, and that is untrue. There's no way that's it. But keep in mind that even Sifu Dan has said many times that what people get other than in the Jeet Kune Do class. So what if you're now tuning in, you'll have to watch the beginning of the broadcast to see what it is that I read, or maybe I'll read it again at the end, right? So it's all about the product versus the process, right? Okay, so that's the misconcept, the Jeet Kune Do misconcept within the Jeet Kune Do clan. Now, outside of the Jeet Kune Do clan, there's a thing that I was recently made aware of, that there are some people who are talking about today's Jeet Kune Do lacks what they call aliveness training, which is, I disagree with that wholeheartedly, but I know where they're coming from. I've been told that this whole thing about aliveness, my senior, Cass Magda, has told me that was something that was being talked about in the 1970s, right? So 40 years later, when there are people out there saying, oh, Jeet Kune Do this and Jeet Kune Do that, right? And there are guys who, in particular, will talk about visiting the Inasano Academy, and they take a look at what's being done there, and in their opinion, I guess I'm going to paraphrase what they're saying, is that, well, they're doing what they do, but it's not the way Jeet Kune Do is supposed to be. But see, what they may not be aware of is exactly what was written in 1976. So let me read it again. What page was it? 149, I think it was, right? Nope, it wasn't 149. So I can't now I can't find it, right? But it was where Sifu Dan said that beginning students are told that what they're learning is not Jeet Kune Do. So if you visit the Inasano Academy today, and you go there thinking that you're going to see Jeet Kune Do being trained, then you're mistaken, right? What you're seeing is component parts that ultimately have to be put together. Now, when and how Sifu Dan and who he works with in putting that stuff together, that's something you'd have to determine by asking him. I know that it's done. I've been on the receiving end of it over 30 years. I've also been present. when other people were on the receiving end of it. Okay, so I'll just tell you that it does exist. So aliveness training. I disagree, because I find a lot of aliveness can be done in drills like the Chisao, the Hubud, or the Sombrada, right? So for people who might not be aware, so Chisao is a thing taken from the Wing Chun, right? And the reason why I disagree is because right from the beginning, as I was taught these drills and introduced to this type of training, I was taught that the essence of the drill is not in the learning of the fixed pattern, or even in the learning of a bunch of different fixed patterns, right? Remember we talked about this a couple broadcasts ago about phase training, and I was telling you that phase 3 training is partially supposed to be about the elimination of known weaknesses, right? Well, what you can do with one of those flow drills is you identify the weakness, and then you use the flow drill to isolate that weakness. So you identify it, then you isolate it, and then through the repetitive format of the flow drill, you can now be addressing that problem, that situation, over and over and over and over again in a live setting. So it's not a fixed. Sometimes this is difficult to explain just using words, right? So I'll tell you this. All right. There are two ends of a flow drill. So let's take the single-handed Chisao, right? So if I'm on the receiving end, right, I start in Tansao. Let me see if I can get this right. And then I go to the Jig Jern. My partner starts in Fuksao. When I do the straight palm, he goes to Jutsao, right? And then from Jutsao, he goes to Jeet Kune. So I'm here, I go here, he does Jutsao. When he does the Jeet Kune, then I go to Bongsao. So if you look at that, when I start, at that point of the flow drill, I am giving. Do you understand? If he is in Fuksao and he receives, right? So I just told you what he's doing. I'm giving, he's receiving. So that is the start, right? That's one version of the starting point of a flow drill. Now, let's go from Wing Chun's Chisao to Kali's Hubud, right? So one person hits, the other person goes inside, comes under, traps, and punches back. When I punch, I am giving. When my partner punches at me, now I am receiving. So I go inside or outside, or however it is that we determine we're going to deal with it, and I do my stuff, and I go to him. So we go back and forth like this. So there's giving and receiving in the flow drills. Here's how you use it. The essence is not the pattern, just going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. You have to use those drills to develop something. So it could be identification of a weakness. Let's say a guy has a problem with timing or something, right? So you identify that that's the weakness. So now you use that giving and receiving deal to isolate that weakness and work on it to get him better at it, if that makes sense, right? We do the same thing in Sombrada, right? Because it's all flow drills, it's all back and forth stuff, right? If you want a Jeet Kune guideline for this, right? It's same book, right? This is today's what we call reference material, right? So page 94, he says, in Jeet Kune, one does not accumulate but eliminates. It is not daily increase but daily decrease. The height of cultivation always runs to simplicity. It is the halfway cultivation that runs to ornamentation. So it is not how much fixed knowledge one has accumulated, rather it is what one can apply alively that counts. Being is definitely more valued than doing. You get it? So that's why you'll hear me say from time to time, Jeet Kune Do is not something that we do. Jeet Kune Do is something that ultimately we become, right? But listen to what he says. It's not how much fixed knowledge. So the fixed set pattern, which we said in other broadcasts are incapable of pliability or adaptability. Truth is outside of any fixed pattern. So it's not how much fixed knowledge, it's what one can apply alively, which goes back to approximating the reality of the situation. So aliveness in your training, and understand this, aliveness in your training is not just a physical thing. Aliveness in your training is a mental and or emotional thing also. And that's what makes the Jeet Kune Do training so interesting, fascinating, and perhaps difficult at certain stages for some people, because it's a total investment thing. You really don't, it's a cliche, but you really get as much out of the training as you put into it. And so it's not just showing up physically, it's showing up emotionally and mentally also, ready to do battle, so to speak, right? So that brings us now to the last section of today's broadcast. So this is the thing about limitless possibilities. So those of you who were on, I think it was last week, because sometimes I forget what last week's topic was. We talked about mastery and George Leonard, the Aikido author, right? And this is the thing. And here's why I bring this up, because there is a quote. Let's see. So this is page 53 of the Absorb What Is Useful book, right? Where it says, martial arts, like life itself, are a constant unrhythmic movement as well as constant change. Flowing with this change is very important. Finally, a Jeet Kune Do man who says JKD is exclusively JKD is simply not with it. He's still hung up on his own self-closing resistance, right? So this is where Bruce Lee is saying that you can find, recognize, realize, acknowledge, appreciate aspects of Jeet Kune Do outside of the physical art of Jeet Kune Do. And again, that's another thing that sometimes makes it difficult for people to get, that there's the physical Jeet Kune Do, there's the philosophical Jeet Kune Do, right? Okay, so back to limited possibilities, and we'll wrap up with this. So there's an article in the Aikido Journal or something like that, an interview with George Leonard. And the question is, well, I got to read this here, right? What makes Aikido so deep? And George Leonard says, well, it's deep because it's limitless. Things that have limits are never as deep. With Aikido, you can figure out that the number of techniques, variations, kaishiwaza, and such end up at an infinite number of possibilities, right? Now, my buddy, because my student Miguel is on here, so my buddy Joe Rogan has been reported to say about Jiu-Jitsu, it's a complex game of kinetic chess. I mean, it's more complex than chess, because in chess you've got these different pieces and they're restricted in their movements. Jiu-Jitsu is not restricted in movement, and every transition has so many different possibilities and so many different setups, right? Now, I also heard him say one time that Helson Gracie gave him the best explanation of BJJ when he said something like, I do this, you do this, I do this. And the first time I heard him say that, I was like, yeah, that's what we call counter for counter, right? So Bruce Lee, in his greatness, is willing to say that a Jeet Kune Do man or Jeet Kune Do person who thinks that Jeet Kune Do is exclusively Jeet Kune Do is not with it. But we have a lot of these guys, right, who seem to think that Aikido is it, and I seem to think, I wasn't there, I can't say exactly what it is they mean, but they seem to think that Aikido is it, or they seem to think that BJJ is it. But in Jeet Kune Do, we know better, right? Because Now, we're partial to Jeet Kune. That's the art that we have chosen to devote ourselves to. But that doesn't mean that we're so ignorant that we will discount or discard or disregard what other people are doing, right? So, nothing new to us, this whole idea of limitless possibilities, right? So, I'll give you a template, let's call it, for this limitless possibilities thing, right? So, and I'll use Kali. If we look at this 3-count sequences of Kali's double stick, right? So those of you who are familiar with the Filipino arts, you'll know, like, we might have, we might go inward, backhand, right? And we go high, 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 right? Now, if we take that, and I actually do have a video of this on the YouTube somewhere. Maybe I'll put a link to it down there, right? So we have high, high, high. That high, 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 we could turn into jab, cross, and hook. If I go high, high, low, it can be jab, cross, and body hook. If I go high, low, high, it can be jab, high, cross to the body, and then hook back to the head. So you see where I'm going with this, right? Those of you who know about Kali's double stick, you know that there are 8 basics. There are 4 basics that start on the high line, and then there are 4 basics that start on the low line. So we have 8 basics. And those 8 basics give us actually 64 basics because of certain variations that you can put in, right? If we can, now I talked about 3 punches, right? We can take that and we can extend it beyond the 3 punches. So instead of jab, cross, hook, I could start at cross, hook, cross. I could start at hook, cross, hook. I could start at hook, uppercut, whatever, and on and on and on and on, right? So if we take it even just to 5 basic punches, then we have a whole lot. But here's the discovery. So if I'm going high, 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 what happens if I insert middle? So now I go high, middle, high. So for the mathematicians in the rooms, right, those basics, that 8 basics, if you introduce the element of middle, it jumps to 27 basics. So now we've got, and that's the idea. What I'm trying to convey here is that's the idea of limitless possibilities. But we discovered it in double stick, but now we take it and we apply it to empty hands. We can apply it also to knife fighting. We can apply it to maybe stick and dagger or whatever. So the limitless possibilities, right, is not a big deal for us. So I'm gonna ask you this, right, and you guys can comment about it live here or on the replay or what have you. Take a top-level jiu-jitsu guy, right? And I'm not putting anybody down. Those of you who know me, you know me well enough, right? That when I do stuff like this is intellectual exercise, right? So if you take a top-level jiu-jitsu guy, right? A black belt in jiu-jitsu, how many of them can kick and punch at the same level of their grappling? Can they swing a stick at the same level of their jiu-jitsu? Can they knife fight at the same level of their jiu-jitsu? But now take a high-level Jeet Kune guy who has trained in jiu-jitsu to black belt level. What do you have? You got a guy whose BJJ is high level, but his kicking and punching and his weaponry is also high level, right? He can do it. So people like Cass Magda, who is a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, Greg Nelson, who is known, Greg is probably better known now as an MMA coach, right? So he's a high-level jiu-jitsu black belt. Check out Burton Richardson, for example, Daniel Sullivan, right, at OC Kickboxing. You look at these guys, these are all Jeet Kune guys who went into BJJ, right? I personally have never heard of a high-level BJJ guy who went into Jeet Kune and became skilled in it. I could be wrong. If any of you out there know about people who have done this, please feel free to comment about it and let me know, right? So all I'm saying is that true limitless, right, or the true approach of limitless has to go both ways. You can't really say, well, limitless possibilities in this one approach to martial art training or this one approach to martial art combat. You see? So I'll leave it there. Okay. Guys, be sure to check out, go to, I got a piece of news for you. So you know that the volume 1 of the Jeet Kune Quick Skills series is available at ilovejeetkundo.com, right? And all of that we talked about today, volume 1 is an introduction, so to speak, to, let's call it the beginner level of Jeet Kune Do. As we develop the volumes, we'll go deeper and deeper and deeper in the same way that we talk about, sometimes we talk about basic stuff in the broadcast, but then we go deeper into topics. But the other thing I wanted to tell you, I was a little bit late actually because I was making sure that I had the domain name registered and what have you. And so there's going to be a new website coming up at jkddrills.com or jeetkunedrills.com. Don't go there now because it's not live, but it will be live by this time next week, because if it isn't, Miguel, who's watching, will kill me. All right? Okay, so everyone, I hope you had a good time today. If you didn't see the whole thing, I'm going to post it as soon as we're done. I'll put it up on the I Love Jeet Kune Do page. Go back and check it out. Like it, comment on it, share it with your friends. We will start within a couple weeks uploading them to the new I Love Jeet Kune Do YouTube channel. And then the other thing that we'll be doing is putting the audio onto Podbean, iTunes, wherever it is, right? All that stuff is in development. So everybody, enjoy the rest of your day. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, signing off. Take care.